You know the feeling. You're staring at a blank page or the very beginning of a new project, and the air just feels heavy. It's as if the sheer scale of what you want to build has paralyzed you before you even take a step. We tell ourselves that progress means being perfect right out of the gate. But when you demand perfection on day one, the pressure becomes so intense that you retreat inward, trapped inside your own head instead of actually doing the work. This is when your brain switches to autopilot. Faced with a massive challenge, your mind defaults to a freeze response, looking for any comfortable distraction to avoid the discomfort of trying. We think we're just waiting for the right moment, but the obsession with a flawless start actually blinds us to our own avoidance, keeping us anchored permanently at the starting line. Once you're on autopilot, your days start to look exactly the same. You begin with a quiet hesitation, which turns into a convenient excuse to delay, which immediately generates stress. Every time you fail to start, that inaction feeds right back into the system. The procrastination compounds the original fear, and the entire cycle accelerates. This loop remains invisible because it thrives in the dark. It continues unchallenged as long as we refuse to look closely at our own hesitation. But here is the hard truth of the creative process. You cannot change a behavioral pattern that you refuse to see. We often expect progress to be loud and dramatic, but real progress usually starts with something much quieter. It begins simply by noticing. It happens the moment you pause for just 1 second to say, "I am avoiding this." You stop completely and explicitly recognize the thought or the habit that is holding you back. That tiny interruption snaps your mind out of its trance. Instead of passively drifting through the autopilot cycle of self-sabotage, you actually wake up. Finding this internal friction does not mean your project is doomed. In fact, noticing that you are struggling means you are finally actively engaged with the work. Catching yourself in a bad habit is not a failure. It is the moment growth actually becomes possible. When you finally wake up, it's entirely normal to feel a sudden wave of shame. You look back, see how your weaknesses purely as data, information you can manage. Because once you see the data clearly, a conversion happens. A person who notices anger learns calm. Observing fear builds a foundation for courage. By observing the problem without judgment, that old repetitive autopilot loop fractures. You are no longer trapped in a circle. That is the power of awareness. It breaks the pattern and turns a knee-jerk, anxious reaction into a deliberate, empowering choice. Now that you have clear eyes, you might feel the urge to overhaul your entire process. But you don't need to fix your whole life today, and you certainly don't need to finish the massive project right now. The formula relies on scale. Small awareness generates small changes in behavior, and a small change is simply the willingness to take the very first, tiniest physical action toward your ultimate goal. Writing 1 sentence, sketching 1 line, placing 1 block. These tiny, independent actions don't stay isolated for long. They rapidly multiply and compound over time, dismantling the paralysis that kept you frozen. While clear awareness identifies the path forward, these small physical actions provide the evidence you need to trust yourself again. As you continue to notice your energy and thoughts, you identify roadblocks before they have the chance to stop you. You gain agency over the internal friction that used to be invisible. This is how a massive endeavor actually takes shape. Your life begins to change not through one giant, perfect leap, but through sustained clarity. A project finally moves the moment you abandon the illusion of perfection. It happens when you finally choose to look directly at your fear and see it for exactly what it is. Having clear eyes leads to better choices.